Good evening, everybody.
Hi.
Thanks for coming out. We were just discussing backstage the intricacies of the introduction, and I thought these people are all here to hear Suzan-Lori. They know who she is. Yeah. There is no reason for that. But
or I'll start talking. Blah.
Just start talking, and you'll keep us. But we of course are here to talk about a few things.
Yeah.
But in the immediate. How many people here have already seen White Noise, Suzan-Lori's play that is now up at the public? Okay, so there's enough that we have to be mindful of not giving too much of it away.
Oh, okay.
It's running through May 5th.
Yes,
at
and
the
if you want
Theater.
Tickets, you have to sell one of your children.
You're going to have to sell a child.
It's a little tight in there right now. I mean, a little sold out.
It is,
but
because we're in New York. All right, so then
okay.
We'll give a little away too then.
Yeah. Yeah, we will. I'll do a reenactment. I'm doing it right now. I'm starting right now.
So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the play.
Yes.
And then you should be getting your questions ready, and then we're going to have questions from you.
Yes.
And then we're going to talk some more about the great many other things that Suzan-Lori is doing in the world right now, including a new production of Native Son that is on HBO, including a band, including an upcoming series on Aretha Franklin. So we'll take 2 rounds of questions is the point. So get your first round about White Noise and the theater, and then we'll come back for other stuff. Sound good? All right, so let's start with White Noise.
Buckle yourselves in.
As I understand it, you've said that this play is something of a fairy tale.
Oh, did I say that?
That's what I'm told. What did you what did you mean by that? And if you don't remember saying it,
I don't remember.
Does it ring true? And why does it ring true?
I don't remember. Maybe because happily ever after is hard work. Maybe that's why I thought it was a fairy tale. Maybe because the real work begins at the end of the play. As challenging as the play is, the real work starts, not when the curtain falls, because in that space there is not a curtain, but the real work starts when the lights go down and the actors are taking their bows. And the real work, you realize, the real work starts with me. Yeah. And so maybe that's why I thought it was kind of like a fairy tale. There are no frogs in the play. There's some kissing, and there's a bowling alley, but no one kisses a frog.
So there's a lot happening in this play, and I felt like the best way to start...
Although, I'm sorry, there kind of someone does kiss a frog. No, a turtle, but that's another level. Sorry. I know. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about the turtle. Yeah. It's a turtle. Okay.
I feel like the best way to get into this is to introduce the people we meet in the story. So there are 4 people.
4 people.
They are in they've been in relationships of varying kind with one another for many years.
Yes.
They were old friends in college.
Yes.
But when we meet them, they're 2 interracial couples.
2 interracial couples, yeah.
Let's start. So let's just walk through each of these people, and you introduce us to them and what they've got going on in the world. And maybe we should start with Leo.
Let's start with Leo.
Who is Leo and what's going on for him?
So Leo is, he's the first character. He's the character that starts off the play. And Leo is a brother, a man of African descent in his 30s, who is a visual artist and who has insomnia. And that's how he starts off the play. I can't sleep, all right, he says, while strangely enough sitting in a red chair. And all the chairs in the theater are red, pretty much. So that's intentional. So he has insomnia. He can't sleep. He can't sleep because years and years ago, when he was 5 years old, on an anniversary of MLK's death. He doesn't remember which one, but they were honoring that tragic day in a church basement, and a teacher of his, a school teacher, a science teacher, Miss Malvina, who also enjoys her flask. She comes up to him and says, "Leo, do you know that one day the sun that shines up above, do you know that one day the sun is going to go out and everything is going to go all black?" and he begins to get a huge case of anxiety, and he stays up at night wondering where the sun is. And this continues through his adult years. So that's Leo.
And he's, as a consequence, struggling with his art.
He's struggling with his art, yeah, because it's hard to, he can't sleep, and he tries all these remedies to get him to get a good night's sleep. And what finally happens is his best friend, whose name is Ralph, who is a white guy, and is also in his 30s, all around the same age, gives Leo a white noise machine. That's where we get the title of the play, to help him sleep. And it works. Until it doesn't.
Until it doesn't.
And then it becomes just a horrible sound in Leo's head. And he can't sleep, he can't work, he doesn't get any work done, and then his anxiety just starts to just escalate and escalate.
And then the next person we meet is Dawn.
Who
is Leo's white girlfriend.
Leo's white girlfriend, who's also a lawyer. Works as doing mostly work for folks who can't afford lawyers, so she's a do-gooder, you could say, and really believes in justice and really believes that she wants to do good for folks and doesn't want another young black man in prison. A wonderful person, the kind of person who you would want on your side if something difficult were to go down with you. And she's his girlfriend, and she cares for him. She cares a lot about him, but she doesn't want to marry him, which creates some
tension. And I gather she is struggling with, and all of these characters that we'll go through, they're struggling with identity questions as well. And it seems like she's struggling with this idea of herself as a white person who cares about the world, as a white liberal, seems to be explicitly what she's struggling with. Is that true? Is that what's going on for her?
We could say she's struggling with herself in the world. I say she's struggling with, how can I be a just person in this unjust world? How can I do the right thing when everybody else seems to be doing the wrong thing, and that seems to be all right for them? And she really she realizes that the social contract is broken. That basic human kindness that should exist between us, that's a wish maybe, but might exist between us. That contract that we could have between us is broken. Right. And that's the root cause of a lot of the difficulty that we have in the world today.
You mentioned that she won't marry Leo.
No.
Their relationship, and so this part of why I'm starting with these characters is that it feels to me like so much. It all turns on these relationships between these four people, and the way it all goes so wrong. And it seems like the first thing that seems to go wrong is that so Leo has this run-in with the police, and Dawn wants to save him. She wants to. It feels to me like she wants to be his savior, and he doesn't want to be saved.
Well, she wants him to she wants him to get a lawyer up, and sue the shit out of the police, right? And he's just so fucking sick and tired. He doesn't want his life to be like one of those biopics about, brother under the thumb of the man gets rescued by some white lady lawyer. He's just so angry. He's done everything right in his whole life. He's done everything correct. I mean, your last name is Wright, so you know what that's like.
I do.
He's done everything correct.
Infallibility is something that I'm very familiar with.
But he's a good guy, He went to college. He's got a career. He works hard. He's kind to people. And yet, he's done everything right, and yet nothing is all right. And that isn't all right. And that fills him with a great amount of anger at this point in his life, and he just doesn't want to, challenge the cops and get all into that and do that. So he feels he's just at the end of his rope. I think he's at the end of he just doesn't see a way forward, really. None of them do. They've all four characters have been pushed into corners by the world,
So we'll get to how the big moment of him being pushed into the corner, but then let's quickly introduce the other two. So
Ralph, his best friend, a white guy who has inherited a chain of bowling alleys from his father. So Ralph is of means. He's got money. Little footnote down here. Ralph and Leo used to be on the bowling team in college. So they're great bowlers. And if you can imagine, we do have bowling in the play. So if you've never seen bowling in a play and you want to see bowling in a play, that's one reason to come to this play. And you would think that
there's
play
a lot
about,
of it's a significant amount of bowling.
There's a lot of bowling. There's a lot of bowling. And I learned just a couple of days ago that there's a book, maybe someone in the audience has read it, called Bowling Alone. Our director, Oscar Eustace, told me this just yesterday. I'm like, motherfucker, you told me this yesterday. Bowling Alone, in which I think a scholar, probably a sociologist, posits does someone know this? No, I hear yes. But posits the notion that one of the reasons why our social contract might be frayed is because of the collapse of bowling. You're nodding. Is this correct?
Of places where people can gather together, right?
And bowl. No. Which is my experience. That's why I was so deeply interested in bowling. My father was in the service. We moved all around the world, but wherever we went, especially in the States, there was a bowling alley and there was an opportunity to join, even if you weren't a great bowler. My parents were good, but they weren't great at bowling. And you could join and you could sit in those whatever they're called, banquettes like this, and you could eat the chips and perhaps drink a beer and while your friends stood at the line and attempted to hit down the pins. And it was a beautiful thing, and I would go with them and watch how they, newcomers in town, would make friends very easily and quickly with people of different races and social groups. And it was a lovely, lovely thing. And I would always be the kid who wanted to come on their parents' date night, which is kind of sad. But my brother and sister would be at home with the babysitter, and I'd be sitting there in the back watching my parents bowl. And so I put this, in a play.
But Suzan-Lori, this now I'm a little disturbed because
you're disturbed
because you make the bowling alley quite a dark place in this play. It is
Really?
it's the place where the pivotal moment happens, where having Leo having felt broken in this way decides to sell himself into slavery.
Yes, he does.
As Ralph, his white friend's slave. Right.
Ralph's got because he wants to feel protected and respected, and he figures, fine. Then, and it's tricky. So this idea for the play came from another play I've written in 2014, Father Comes Home from the Wars. And there was, thank you. So there was a moment in that play where the man in the 1860s said, the enslaved man was saying, okay, so in the future when I'm free and I'm walking home from work and a law enforcement individual comes upon me and I'm going to tell that law enforcement individual, I own myself. Because they'll say, who owns you? And you'll say, I'll say, I own myself. Will that be enough for them to leave me alone? And his friend says, gee, man, I don't know. And I sat there watching that play several years ago, and I said, I need to write a play about the future, which is now. And so that's how this play came about. So Leo in this play feels like he wants to feel protected and respected. And fuck it. I know how to do that. I'm going to sell myself to my friend, so I'm going to be his property. So it's just, again, an angry, desperate measure. And he says he'll do it for 40 days because after 40 days, he'll transcend this bullshit, he hopes, and find a way to just go forward in the world.
And what is it he's transcending? That's one of the things I'm struggling with. What did he think he was freeing himself of?
Well, sort of the undigested rage and despair. And I don't know, maybe you don't have, I don't want to speak for, again, there's no monothought in this culture, and there's certainly no black monothought, but I personally, and brothers and sisters I know, have a lot of undigested rage and despair. And interestingly enough, not just brothers and sisters, people I know of all races, classes, and persuasions. We carry around, the people I know. Maybe I just hang out with an angry crowd, a surly bunch, my friends, but we carry around a lot of feelings and we don't know quite what to do with them. We've all, I think, in this country, we've all been promised something, no matter what your race or your class or whatever. We've all been promised something. And the country is not delivering it equally to us. And so we've all got these undigested feelings. And he wants to process those feelings. And so he will take himself to the darkest place. Because like Freud or Jung said, the only way out is through. He's going to take himself through it, and he hopes to come to some kind of realization. He wants to feel his feelings and come to something, And
so one of the, I think, really fascinating tensions in the story is between him and Misha, who was the fourth character, the first person we meet, who is Ralph's wife, who is a black woman, who is, it feels like, taking a very different tack at the same thing. Can you tell us about what's going on with Misha?
Yeah, so Misha, who graduated Summa, so she in college graduated at the top of her class, so she's the smarty pants of the group, sister, who has decided that she is going to be an internet influencer, a vlogger. And so she has a show that she does once a week called Ask a Black. And she's online. She's probably, I'm looking at the clock because the show is running right now, she's probably online right now. And what people can do is you can call in and ask her questions. And so people call in from all over the country and ask her questions. So this is her attempt to digest some of those feelings, not just in herself, but in the culture, by being sort of a representative of the race, and she's opening up a dialogue.
But she's quite an outsized representative, right? I mean, she's almost playing a caricature of herself.
Well, yeah. I mean, because her reasoning is that that's what people want, authenticity, and this is what authenticity looks like. I mean, I don't know about you, but there are, sometimes certain ways of being of African descent are profitable and certain ways are less so, I mean, if anybody in the audience have ever said, like, for example, if you're born in New York and you have someone, whatever your race or class, whatever, and you have someone say, gosh, you don't seem like a New Yorker, like that. So now transpose that into being a person of African descent. Gosh, you don't seem like a black person. You think, what does that fucking mean? Oh, so there's that. So she figures to be popular, she's going to heighten those mannerisms that are commonly thought to be part of the African experience. Like, say, somebody who grew up in who wants to be authentic and wants to adopt some mannerisms that would be called from the hood, because that's what sells,
I wonder about, in this, one of the things that I really took away, and so I'm going to see if you meant it.
Of course I meant it.
Is this tension between Leo and Misha, who are both kind of performing blackness, right? Like, and so it feels like Leo has decided in selling himself into slavery to perform a version of victimhood, whereas she seems like she's performing strength. Right. Is that fair to characterize them that way? And can I ask, do you sit in any of that? Where do you show up in those characters?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think I can look at my day and perform. I perform, victimhood and strength depending on the moment. You know what I mean? You're trying to hail a cab. What kind of blackness am I performing there? Not too much strength. Not sure how that would read. Not too much victimhood. You want them to know you have money to pay the fare. A lot of things, so it's always gauging, like, how can I best present myself to just accomplish the simple day-to-day tasks. So it's a constantly moving role. It's not a fixed role. Interestingly enough, they say about the play, most plays, I'm in there, and you probably can't tell from this conversation, it's also very funny.
It is. I'm sorry.
No, it's very, very funny. There are a lot of jokes in the play. The actors say that on any given night, they don't know where exactly the jokes are going to land. usually after a month running a play, month or two, they've been running it for quite some time now, the actors know where the jokes are going to land, and so they can pause and let the laughter happen. And here they say, night to night, we don't know what people are going to laugh at.
Why do you think that is?
I think because we're alive. I mean, aren't we?
We are.
Okay. So I think then that different audiences, different age groups, different demographics, whenever they find different things funny and appealing or frightening, or it's a very live, it's live, it's theater, it's live action.
Well, it's also, I mean, was it a deliberate choice to have the lights are up in the audience for a lot of
some of it, yeah.
And I wonder about how much people in the audience, how conscious we are of each other and whether you want us to be.
Yeah, that's part of it. It's in the Ansbacher Theater. For those of you who've been in the public theater, if you saw Topdog, Underdog, and the Ansbacher, a lot of my plays are done in that space. And it's what I call 3 sides live, kind of like this, with the audience wrapping around the stage so we can see each other. And that's part of the show. We can watch each other. Because again, we start with a character sitting in a red chair, much like the audience. The majority of the audience members, the chairs are red.
Yeah. So, do you think there's a difference in white, black, whatever your racial position is, and how you receive this play?
Yes, but I think it's not just white, black. It's white, black, over 40, under 20. College people who go to a lot of theater, people who don't. It's not as simple as white, black. It's a living, thing. It's exciting. I mean, it's thrilling because of that. Because we're not just, you can't just sit there. I mean, I can't. As a writer, one would think, oh, yeah, right. I side most closely with the person that I most obviously look like, which isn't true necessarily,
Who do you side most closely?
Well, I'm right in the middle of all these 4 characters. I agree with all of them, which is what made the play so difficult to write and so much fun to write too.
Well, and on that, so we talked about performing blackness, but it feels like there's a lot of performing whiteness, also with Ralph and Dawn's characters,
right?
And it almost they seem to have a similar tension. Is this true? Whereby Dawn is sort of performing what she thinks is a proper liberal white person,
right? And
Ralph doesn't seem to buy their performance for himself as much. What's going on with that?
I think for all characters and with all people, there's a moment when the performance breaks down, and you realize you're behaving in a certain way in order to get something, and then you realize one day that just won't work for you anymore. And that's what happens to the characters over the course of the play. They become real, which means things become difficult. And so the conversations that they used to paper over and decide not to have because they were kind of awkward, right? They start having. And that's where the tension comes from. They just start saying things that they're feeling, which I think is ultimately good. And like I said, the real work starts at the end of the play.
Well, it's where it gets quite dark, too, right? I mean, we're in a master-slave relationship.
At the end of the play, though.
Yes. But even before that, I mean, as the secrets start coming out and the tensions start coming out. And I couldn't help but think about, and I know James Baldwin has been a big part of your life.
Right. He was my writing teacher in college.
Which, I mean,
Yeah, I know. I know. So he gave me a sword, and I gotta use it, baby.
It's just, what kind of world, what a beautiful world.
Yeah.
James Baldwin and Suzan-Lori Parks sitting in a room thinking about writing. I'd like to be there.
He's a great teacher, actually.
But I kept thinking about his novel Another Country.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And which, is all about interracial relationships, or not all about, but it's, it's quite, to me, it's one of his darkest works.
Right.
Because it seems to posit that, at least at the time, the effort to be intimate of any kind, friendships, family, sexually, across racial lines, would literally kill everybody involved. And this was... What are we to take from your vision about interracial intimacy from this play? Because it becomes quite fraught.
Yeah, it's work. It takes real work. But we're living. We're alive. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I'm the kind of person who relishes work. You know, I do a lot of, which is why I have these tattoos on my arm. They're Sanskrit. I do a lot of yoga, and one of the main tenets of yoga is svadhyaya, which is self-study. And so I've been doing yoga for years and years and years, and we hold that as one of our, you know, cornerstones, that I will look at myself and examine myself and ask myself, who am I really and what am I really doing? And really work toward self-knowledge and self-awareness instead of just, you know, pointing the finger at them over there who must be the problems of all our bad stuff. That's some bullshit to my mind. I think, you know, wokeness begins here, and it's not something that I need to point at someone. So it's just my thing. So I relish that. I relish that challenge. And I think interracial love, I mean, my husband's a white guy. Hi, honey.
He's a very charming man. I met him backstage.
But he's more than just a white guy. That's horrible. He's an awesome person, but it takes work. You know, it takes work. It's like you want to work at this. We want to say, hey, okay, we're not all the same. And that's what makes, to my mind, this country truly great. They were actually, and even sisters together. It's like, just because we're both sisters doesn't mean we don't have any conversations, right? We need to have some conversations. We need to, there's so much work to be done. Okay, I'm going to not get on my soapbox.
We're actually here for you to be on your soapbox.
Okay. Okay. I'll just say one thing. Sisters and brothers, we are, like Misha says, we have been trained by the system not to support each other. And I think we need to start supporting each other now, right now. I have a really good friend who's an awesome writer who is Asian American, specifically Korean American. And she said that when what's that cool film that just came out? Crazy Rich Asians came out. She was part of and she's a high up writer in television. And she said that a whole bunch of Asian American folks, high ups in the entertainment industry, came together and had like a luncheon and said, hey, let us support each other. And I was like, fucking A. Black folks are like, hey, wait till they cross the street. I'm going to try to cut them. What's going on? So, but we've been rewarded for that behavior historically. And we're doing what we've learned. It's not some corrupt thing that we have. It's something that we've learned to do, something that we've been rewarded to do. And we can do better than that. And it's hard because we have habits that have been rewarded, but I think we can do better. So that's one of my things. That has nothing to do with the play, I don't think. But
maybe it's in there.
Maybe it's in there.
I promise to take. Time always goes fast. I promise to take 2 rounds of questions. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to give you an opportunity if you have questions about. Let's talk about white noise now, and then we'll come back to some broader questions later. So. Get your hand up if you have something to ask, and if not, I'll plow forward.
And
while we're doing
about the characters' names, which is why I got turtle mixed up with frog. Can I say?
Yes.
So the characters' names. The characters' names are Leo, Dawn, Misha, and Ralph. Anybody ever heard of the Ninja Turtles? Right. Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, and Raphael. So that's where I got their names from. And I realize that I tell myself these dumb jokes before I dive deep. And when I find myself laughing, it's ha 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 ha. Oh shit, here I go. Whoosh, down into a deep, difficult place.
Right.
And the laughter is like a lure that hooks me and drags me down. So.
Anyone here? I think we have one in the middle.
Yeah,
I think there's somebody with a mic.
With the yellow beret.
And we'll take a couple, and then we'll come back and take some more at the end.
Yeah, hi. Hello, I love
you have it written down. Oh,
I do. So when writing this play, did you find relevant or consider at all the consumption by adjacent minorities, both those who identify with white America and those who identify with brown America? Because I know I heard you guys talking about like your white audience members and your black ones, and then like the differentiations between those.
What's cool about I have thought of that, and what I build in the play is a system. It's tricky to talk about if you haven't seen it, but it's a system of relationships, right, between 4 people. And what happens is I do all the scenes are different combinations of folks. Every character gets a solo. Yes, sir, you've seen it. Every character gets a solo, and then after the break or the intermission or when the slavery conversation happens and the contract is agreed upon, in the second half of the play, you might notice that combinations of characters continue, but they're only men, only women, only white people, only black people. And so what that does mathematically is it creates a web so that everybody is included in the conversation energetically. That's what happens. But that's what I've noticed happens from our talkbacks, because we have Latinx folks in there, Asian American folks, Asian people come, people from all over are definitely invested and involved in the conversation because of the lines that I've drawn energetically and with the scenes. So it's you get the biggest bang with 4 characters. You combine them in different ways, and you sort of get everybody in the net in a good way.
I didn't notice that, I have to say.
You didn't notice after the break, you're right. The men have a scene, the women have a scene. The men have a scene, then solo, then the white folks have a scene, then solo, then the black folks have a scene. So yeah, it's definitely it's cut up like that. Whereas in the first half of the play, it's interracial, you know, and then all 4 of them together like that. So yeah.
Can I follow up really fast?
Well, only if there's no one else that has a burning question about the play.
Burning.
You win the right to follow up.
I think that's really great. I think that it seems like that sort of, I think that's really great. It seems like that sort of solution would make it easier for people of different demographics to actually understand the plight of the 2 demographics that you're talking about. So I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And again, it's tricky because you see what appears to be, you know, these demographics, but actually it's talking about all of us because, you know, questions and things like equality and inequality and racism and fairness and justice and getting your piece of the pie and all those things, it's a question that involves all of us. You know what I'm saying? So that's, you know, it's not just a white-black thing, but that's just how I decided to draw this one out, you know. So
I got to move us to Native Son.
Native Son.
Because I have to say, so Native Son is a novel by Richard Wright that you have now.
Is he a relative of yours? Right.
I'm sorry to say, no, who is not a relative of mine, sadly. However, I do have a long relationship to the novel.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, like what?
It's just, I mean, it's such a, particularly as a black man. I mean, as a young black man, I read that book multiple times, right? And found myself in it in a bunch of different ways, and have continued to find myself in it in a bunch of different ways over the years, depending on how angry or vulnerable or how I'm feeling relationship to the world.
Right.
And I guess the fairly obvious first question to ask you about this is just that, I mean, it's such an iconic text. People have tried to adapt it to film failingly in the past.
I think they did it twice. Well, they made the film.
Well, they made the film, but
I mean, in the movie, in the film business, our expectations are, it got greenlit, it got made.
Is it a hard book to adapt? Is there something uniquely hard about it to adapt?
Right. Correct. It's a heavy story. It's a horrible story. It's practically a true story. It's the story of a brother who you don't want to be your brother, and yet he's your brother. You are your brother's keeper, yo. And Richard Wright, I think I read somewhere, he doesn't want us to cry for bigger. And yet I cried for bigger when I read the novel. I cried for bigger and myself. I cried for Mary Dalton. I cried for the Dalton family. You know, I cried for Bigger's mom and his, so.
Can you? It feels silly to do, but can you give just a very quick recap of
the novel?
Of the novel.
I hope I don't get it wrong. If there are any Richard Wright scholars in the audience, maybe you could. No. So so it's set in the novel's 80 years old, and it's set in.
Do the math.
I don't know, but it's set a long time ago, way back in the war, and. It's a story of a young man whose name is Bigger Thomas, who wants to find his place in the world, you could say. Lives with his mother and his siblings in Chicago. They don't have a lot of money. Mother is hardworking. Father died when he was young. And one day his mom, he's angry. Right, that's another. He's angry. Can't find his way through this world.
Similar to Leo.
Yeah, similar to Leo. Although, similar. But and one day his mom, he hears of a job for him, a job driving as a chauffeur for a wealthy family named the Daltons. Wealthy white family. This family, so he goes to interview for the job. This family's a righteous family. I mean, they're nice folks. They live in a nice house. They seem lovely. Mrs. Dalton, Mrs. Dalton is visually impaired. She's blind. Mr. Dalton is gregarious and kind. They have one daughter whose name is Mary Dalton, who's outgoing and wants to do good in the world, and I don't want to mix up the story of the novel with the story of the film, because the story of the film is closer to my mind right now. But Bigger gets the job. He loves the job, and one night. I'm trying to think, because I can only think of the film now.
Well, the main point here is that he does what's driving in the story is that there is he murders Mary
her.
Dalton.
Well, he murders
accidentally.
her accidentally. She is I want to get this right. She is intoxicated, I think, in the book, and noisy, loud. He helps her up the stairs, the grand staircase in the house. She's making a lot of noise. He's so terrified that he's going to lose his job, which is kind of sort of the only nice thing that's kind of ever happened to him, kind of sort of. And so he is trying to get her to shut up and takes a pillow and puts it over her face. And as the mother, visually impaired, cannot see, comes to the door and is standing in the doorway, he's shut up. And when he removes the pillow, Mary has died. And then it gets even more intense, because he figures, well, I got to dispose of the body. They have a furnace downstairs. He puts her in the furnace. And onward from there,
And the idea of both in Baldwin and in your, in Wright and in your take, is that he can disappear. Right. That he is so unseen, and people have such a so many ideas about a black male and his body that they can map onto it, that perhaps he can walk through the world and no one will see him.
Right.
And
which of course doesn't happen.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the choices you've made that I'm particularly curious about, and so in the book, Bigger Thomas, and I have to say, I wonder if I just conjured this, or if this is how Richard Wright described him. He's a large man. He's stoic. He's and he is representative of a lot of things that white people fear, physically. Right. And you have cast him as more Afro-punk.
Ashton Sanders, who's he's a kind of he's slender, and kind of, when he leans on you, he kind of drapes himself on you, and he's always got the sly smile. Wonderful brother. But Rashid Johnson, who's the director of the film, and also a really awesome visual artist, we really wanted to explore Bigger's fragility, his strength, his determination, but also get to those things that we don't ordinarily allow in our minds certain people to feel, i.e. black women are supposed to be strong. And we're seen often as angry, even when we're not, even when we're just talking with our hands excitedly. But we're not supposed to be fragile. Neither are, black men, not fragile. You're scary if you're big, or if you're large, or even if you're not. You're dangerous. So we wanted to explore what we knew. Also, we wanted to explore the possibility of Bigger Thomas and Mary Dalton becoming friends. That was very important to me, to imagine. It's 2019, and what have we got in 2019? The possibility that we might become friendly.
But again, much like in White Noise, they become friends, and it is not a good thing.
Well, there's work to do. It's not just like friending someone on Facebook. Hello, we're friends now. Great. There's work. That means that's the beginning. Like happily ever after takes a lot of work. There is work to do. There's real work. There are conversations that need to be had. And again, not just between black and white, but between black, and sisters and brothers need to talk to each other. And we all need to start having substantive conversations about what we're really feeling and thinking, and start unpacking some of that stuff. So Big and Mary don't. Mary gives Big, in the film, Mary gives Big a gift, a present, a record, a piece of vinyl that he loves. And he, at her boyfriend Jan's request, gives her some drugs. I think it's Molly he gives her, because they're friends, they're hanging out, they're sharing things. And she gets sort of overwhelmed by the drugs. And then, of course, again, he's scared for his job.
But she's also there's a friendship, but it doesn't feel equal. She's demanding access to his blackness as her employer.
How so? How is she demanding access to his black? Unpack that, please.
That's what it felt like to me. I mean, it was your movie.
But it's your phrase, so I don't know.
It felt like
what do you feel?
He wasn't eager to enter into the friendship. She kept, he was on his job, and she kept saying, "Come hang out. Let's go to the bar. Let's drop your guard, and show me this black world I don't have access to."
Right.
And he was and when he gave into it, it was his undoing.
No. I hear what you're saying, because perhaps he didn't know how to negotiate that friendship. Nor did she, So wanting access to his blackness, wanting access. Sure, he's someone, but is that's not in itself a bad thing. I mean, we demand access to each other's. Your fashion sense, you know what I mean? I want to hang with you because, look, you know where to shop, obviously.
I'm going to take that as a compliment.
I'm serious. I'm like, look at you. You know what I'm saying? And so we are always looking at each other and saying, you're a scholar. You can, and that's not in itself a bad thing, but we skip over the necessary beats of development. And we don't really, there's a point where we might stop listening to each other and only think about what we want from the other. And that's where it gets problematic. Yeah.
We don't have a lot of time, and I hate to rush on from that, because I think that is a profound point. But your band, I promised you we would talk about your band.
I didn't. My band. What? I want this curtain, by the way, because when we rehearse at home.
In addition to writing plays and movies and all the rest of it, you told me backstage, I didn't know this, you were writing songs before you were writing plays.
I was writing, that's the first thing I started writing, songs before I was writing plays or novels or short stories or anything, or essays or films, TV shows, of course. But the songs came first, and it's still the smallest tree in my forest, but we give it a chance to grow. In between the plays and the TV shows, we gig out, so it's cool.
What is it? What brings you joy about it?
I love writing songs, and I love playing the guitar, and I got a good right hand, and I don't know. I love guitars. I love gear. I love. I mean, it's weird, but yeah.
It's not weird. I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah, my husband's making me a new guitar for my birthday, so I'm all excited. We look at wood and we talk about the action and all this shit and what pickups I'm going to have on it. Yeah, but it's and it's just, I think personality-wise, I think the world of literature was more welcoming to me than the world of music. The world of music I found to be at an early age very threatening, for real specific reasons. And the world of literature, I could sort of, being in a library surrounded by books was a safer space for me than being in a bar surrounded by people listening to music or other musicians. So I kind of spent more time in the library as a writer and less time.
And it's the being in the bar stuff.
Well,
that
it's
you mean about
to be a musician. Well, to be a musician, yeah, it's dicey. It's a little, it's kind of. So, but now I'm I got these steel-toed boots.
That's right.
I can do it. So it's called Suzan-Lori Parks and the Band, and it's easy name for the band, and it's like neo soul, black rock,
That's great.
It's fun.
And so, related to that, maybe you are now also about to be the showrunner for National Geographic's next season of Genius, which is going to be about Aretha Franklin. Who?
I know. So I spend, I'm still in the research phase of it, but I spend a lot of time watching clips of her singing, and I read.
Tough life.
I know, right? Tough. I know. I suffer so, and yet I have to go beyond the person that she presented most often to her audience.
What fascinates you about her, or what fascinates? Did I say that right? What fascinates you about her so far?
She's got. I mean, she is her fragility and her strength. Just how she just continued, regardless. I mean, she had some serious hardships that she did not really share with the world necessarily. She might have shared through her voice and her presence and her fucking awesome musical chops, which were amazing. But she just continued on. She kept going when most people would have quit. And that's pretty great.
I continue. Amazing Grace, the double disc, is
one
of the greatest albums ever recorded. I grew up in church. I don't go to church these days. My mother would be very upset with me, but I do go to Aretha on a regular basis, and it just fills me.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
I have only left 5 minutes for your questions, but I was selfish that way. But we do have these 5 minutes. So anything you want to ask, Suzan-Lori Parks, let's go. Who's got one? And I think we're gonna bring a mic around. Here we go with the hat.
With the cool hat. With the hat on the side.
So just going back to the native son thing too, talking about the friendship in that, because even reading the book, there's a lot of power dynamics happening with that. So it's almost like can a friendship even happen in that, with those power dynamics happening? I think that's something that we're I think even as a society kind of exploring right now in terms of who's kind of on top and who's on bottom. But my other question was just about, as a playwright, I guess tackling screenwriting and then how's that, and particularly adapting a work like that. How do you even start? What are the kind of the highs and lows and challenges of that?
Right. No, that's a great question, man. The highs are definitely that I get to work. I feel that I get to work hand in hand with a great writer who, in Richard Wright's case, I've worked on Native Son, Their Eyes Were Watching God. We did for Oprah. When she had the Oprah Winfrey Presents, the Gershwin's Poor Game Best, I did on Broadway a few years back. I get to hold the hand of a great writer, and I get to walk with them. I really feel like the original writer got it right. They really did. Richard Wright did it correctly, right? Our job is to roll the wheel forward. So we're not schooling him on what he should have done. You know what I'm saying? We're not Monday morning quarterbacking his shit, okay? We are saying, wow, well done, brother. Let's bring it to now, to 2019, for example. So that's definitely the high. The other high is that they've done the majority of the work, so I don't have to really figure out the plot points. You know what I mean? I'm like, yay! You know, it's like tracing, tracing something. So that's kind of nice. Low, working on Native Son. Rashid Johnson's a great director. It was joy. The cast was wonderful. The producers were lovely and respectful and cool. There were no lows in that,
There's a lot of beautiful people in that movie, by the way. I mean, just to be on that set must have been
it was
lovely.
It was joyous. It was joyous. So there aren't any lows, but it's just a different kind of tactic between screenwriting and playwriting. Like the difference I tell my students at NYU, the difference between velvet and corduroy. And when you're writing a screenplay, maybe it's velvet. Black velvet. I heard you like black velvet. Black velvet. And
teal also. I like teal.
Okay, a teal or teal. And corduroy. So it's that kind of thing. It's just a different, same action, just different vibe, different feeling. I mean, obviously theater, I feel like I'm right there in the room with them when I write. A screenplay, a movie, a TV show, I turn on the movie in my head. I just watch it. I'm watching, so it's a kind of a different muscle. Yeah, but it's all enjoyable, yeah.
There was another hand over here, back there.
Hi. I have a question that's a bit odd, but in White Noise, you have a contract in the play, and I was wondering how you felt that changed the play formally, if at all, like having that conceit there.
Right. So what she's referring to is Leo, our brother in the play, says, Ralph, I want to be your slave for 40 days. And he's very specific. And he wants them to have a sort of a game plan or a sort of an agreed upon set of circumstances, which is a modern take on the immoral, fucked up system. Sorry, I'm trying to see what I thought, So it's a modern take on it. He's very clear about the 40 days, and he says we should be allowed to do certain things and shouldn't be allowed to do other things. And then, of course, in the next scene, they go about changing everything up and agreeing to change everything up. So it's just more of a modern take on it, that's all.
And that we're locked in. We agreed to lock ourselves into
this.
Yeah.
And it also just vibes with the idea of the social contract, and the contract that Dawn is talking about. Dawn has a contract with her parents, not a written contract, but just an understanding, the understandings that we have with people. So we have in the play an actual physical many-paged document that they agree upon, they review and agree upon. And then in the first scene of Act 2, they change it up. They type out Ralph writes up some amendments, and they put the amendments on the wall. And that becomes the next thing that they agree upon.
And I noted they tack it on the wall. It stays on the wall throughout the act, and it's like it's I believe also a red piece of paper to go with the red chairs.
Yeah.
House on fire.
Yeah, that's right.
There was one over here.
Sure. Hi.
1 second, because we're live streaming, so we want you.
There you go.
So it was so interesting early on when you were talking about anger and society, and you organized that thinking. And I wondered if you wanted to mention or offer, did you have a metamorphosis? Did you have kind of some maybe crucible in your life where you had anger and you then just worked through it?
Yeah, that's great. Did I have some anger at one point in my life, and have I worked through it? It's like that song "How I Got Over," Clara Ward. How I got over. Every day. I sing that song every day.
Was there a crucible?
Was there a crucible
kind of
every day? Every day. Every day there's a crucible. Every day it's like, you have to. I mean, it's not a hit it and quit it. You know what I mean? It's a daily. That's what it is. I bring it on. That's what it means for me to be alive. Here we are. We're grappling with things every single day, and for me, it's about working through it with maximum kindness and generosity so that I can continue to be of service. That's my goal. And when I do that, when I can manage that, instead of like go wah on somebody and wah, you know, when I really can manage that, I feel, yes. Now I am growing. I'm being the person who my forefathers and foremothers dreamed about. That's my job. And whoever we are, right? We have people back there who dreamt of something great, and this is who we are. We're here right now able to realize that. If only we would commit to doing the work. So, thank you.
Folks, Suzan-Lori Parks, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Kai.
And I think we got some more music coming now, I believe. I don't have my headset, so I can't say.
Some
I
cool
think we
music,
just get
yeah.
out.
Okay.